Hi everyone, this is Elena of the Witches Box, and I'm here today with another episode of Witch BookTube. And if you have been following us for the last couple of weeks, we are predominantly covering books on ancestral works since we are approaching October, and October box will be about connecting with our ancestors. So I wanted to do kind of a big deep dive into the books that are out there about ancestral works so that I can review them for you and would give you an opportunity to kind of dive deeper if you wanted to and investigate other books that talked about this topic. So with that said, today's book is by Grimassi, and it's Communing with the Ancestors, Your Spirit Guides, Blood Allies, and the Cycle of Reincarnation. There is the book. And just, because I keep offering running commentaries on design, it's very difficult, I think, for any book to have a photo on it and not have it outdated the second it gets out into the world. It's a very rare photo that will do that. I feel like photos on the cover of books are like cars, right? Don't they say like when you buy a car and the second you drive it off the lot, it's already started to depreciate? I think it's kind of the same theory with photographs on the cover of books that are people or that are certain colors. Like this is just, the color scheme on this is very 1970s. This book was actually released 2016. I think we need to put more thought into how we do photography on the covers of books. And listen, I have 2 books that I've contributed to out there in the world that I did the photography for, and one of them has photography on the actual cover, but I'm telling you that those photos are timeless. Anyway, I'm not biased at all. Before I get into this book, let me read you the bio for Grimassi. He is an extensive writer. We have a couple of other books. I have a couple of other books in my to-be-read pile and my to-be-read cart that are by him that I'm actually really excited to read. So let me read you the bio and then get into this book. Grimassi was an American author of over 20 books and a scholar of paganism with over 40 years of research and study in the genre of Wicca, Strikeria, witchcraft, and neo-paganism. This book. This is one of those books where I really struggled with how I approach this video in a way that is objective and helpful and all of those things that I want these videos to be for all of you. He is a very beloved writer. There is a book of his that I've started to read that I think I mentioned briefly in the big September book haul video. The book was this beautiful prose, and it was very moving for me, and I only got into the first couple of chapters because I was reading other things at the same time, and it was so beautiful and so moving to me that I actually had to put it away so that I can finally find a moment where I can just give it full attention. That's how juicy that book felt. Okay, well, this book was not that, and I really struggled with giving him any sort of a negative review, and as you know, I'm doing all this preamble, and as you know, I don't want to waste either of our times doing book reviews that are negative or that are basically books that I don't recommend. But this book is so popular and he is such a popular writer that I felt that I had to kind of speak to my experience with this book. I really struggled with this book a lot. And it's interesting because at the time that I'm making this video, today, this gives you a little background into like how things work here at the Witches Box. Today's Monday, and today a video went out about Mysteries of the Dark Moon. That's the video that just went live today for you to see. And in the discussion, somewhere in the discussion of that book underneath the video here on YouTube, someone said something about the references, and my response to them was something, I'm really super paraphrasing, but basically what I said to them and what I've been realizing is that I'm really deeply appreciating when books like this are heavily referenced. It gives you context and it gives you places to further research, but it also helps deal with so much of what goes on, I think, in all genres that are nonfiction, particularly right now in witchcraft writing, which is people putting out ideas or thoughts about what people were doing in ancient times with absolutely zero referencing whatsoever, without any evidence whatsoever. And my fear is that it can lead to a lot of misconceptions and misunderstandings and miseducation. So when you talk to me about past cultures or archaeological finds or archaeological theory and thoughts about how people worshipped in the past, give me references. Those help validate what you're saying, but it also gives me context for what I'm learning about myself and my spiritual lineage. Does that make sense? So I wrote that about the video that went live today, which is Demetra George, Mystery of the Dark Moon. There were some issues with that book, but I mean, she's a scholar. She did her work. She has long, extensive lists of references as to what she's talking about. So, coming back to this book, he brings in and weaves in so many threads of countless different cultures of how they may have approached ancestors and what their belief systems around who the ancestors were and how they worshipped and how they didn't worship, with little to any references as to who he's talking about or where he's getting this information. So in the very beginning, he lists Hawaiians and Scandinavians as two of the very last cultures to be worshiping ancestors in our history, in our human history, before Christians came and kind of put a kibosh on all of that and changed the course of their spiritual practices, okay? So he uses them as a reference point because they are the nearest, which is interesting because that's not necessarily true. Native Americans actually are still worshiping their ancestors, and I'm not quite sure why he didn't reference them. He may have, but he didn't actually say that he was referencing them, which is an issue. But he lists those two cultures as the last kind of big cultures that were still worshiping their ancestors and people that we can go back and reference and get an understanding of how they worked with their ancestors, because so much of the other information that we have about other ancient cultures that worship their ancestors are ancient history, and it's kind of harder to get a fuller picture. So he makes a reference to them, but that's it. Then you get things like, some people believe blah, blah, blah about ancestors. There's another culture that actually thought blah, blah, blah about ancestors and worship this way. But he doesn't actually say who. I'm reading and I'm reading and I'm reading and I'm like, I don't even know who you're talking about, and I'm not quite clear where we're going. There is too many layers and too many details woven together that give you way too many perspectives on ancestors, along with his perspective on ancestors, which he claims in the beginning was what he intuited and what was given to him in a dream, and not necessarily anything concrete that comes from a specific lineage, tradition, or spiritual lens. It just felt like I was like trudging through thick mud. It was really uncomfortable, and often, even though paragraph after paragraph he was referencing ancestors, I found myself asking, like, what am I even reading here? I don't know what we're talking about. I found it disappointing, and I didn't want to be disappointed. I didn't want to not like this book. I was actually very much looking forward to reading his perspective on this. And I want to say to you that if you don't mind not having references and not quite knowing who you're reading about, it might not be bad for you, but I don't actually believe that. So there's that. Because often with so many details layered in and you don't know what direction they're coming from, I found myself just not even sure where he was going. On top of all of this, he introduces a few of his own ideas that on their own they're new. I think that I would say that I don't know if the word innovative may feel appropriate to a spiritual practice or a spiritual perspective, but in some ways it felt like it was innovative, that those perspectives alone could have made this book something very interesting and meaty and juicy to dive into, because it would give you and me, the reader, an opportunity to do a little bit of an investigation for yourself. Like, how does this fit? What do I think about this? Does this feel like intuitively like it makes sense to me and my experience of my ancestors? But you don't really have an opportunity to do that because there's so much other stuff that feels like it's just thrown in there. Like everything in the kitchen sink about ancestors, and not in a manner that feels organized or that feels like it's leading into a specific point. I'm bummed. Some people love this book, some people don't. I mean, this is probably one of those books that I'm going to let you decide for yourself. Actually, I'm going to stop there and I'm going to really quickly pivot into something else. As we're getting ready, this is related, so follow me. Stay with me as I go on a massive tangent. As we're getting ready to launch the Witches Book subscription and the Witches Book Coven, which is October 1st, I think when this video comes out, we're still a week out before that happens. I'm thinking a lot about how are we going to deal with or approach books that we don't like. I don't want any of us, and I will absolutely put this into the introduction email for the forum so that people who are subscribed to the book club will know and get an idea that this is what I'm going for. This is what I think can and should happen, and we should have space for this, which is this. I don't expect you all to love the books that I love. And just because I love a book doesn't mean that it's not problematic. I would like for there to be a safe, intelligent, critical thinking space for us to have conversations like, I loved this part of the book and I really didn't love this part of the book. Because what I'm seeing a lot in probably every aspect of Western society or society that happens to hang out on social media a lot is if there is one morsel of anything in a book or a movie or in a person or in a theory or in a whatever, if you find one morsel of something that you don't like, you throw the baby out with the bathwater and it's all crap and you write it off, and it's like this wall comes down and you miss opportunities to gain what you can. Right? We're having, I think, specifically with books, we're having an experience. A book to me is an experience. You're reading, you're taking in, but you're interacting with something that someone else wrote and put out for us to experience and consume. And I would love, at least for all of us at the Witches Book Subscription and the Witches Book Coven, which is a forum that's private to the group, I'd like for there to be space and permission to say, I loved this quote, I really got a lot out of this chapter, but the rest is crap, and this is why I think so. And have intelligent, respectful, hopefully productive conversations around those things. So that's a tangent, because part of the reason why I think that talking about books like this, where this is a writer who has, I think that the bio that I just read to you was old. I think he actually has more than 20 books in production or in publication. He's written extensively. He has studied extensively. He has contributed immensely to pagan thought. And so one book, I don't like it, but that doesn't mean that the rest are going to be crap. And so this is part of why I also hesitate in sharing with all of you things that I don't like, because I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I had a hard time with this book. That's not to say that there aren't ideas here. Like, for instance, the ideas that he proposes or shares as his own interpretation of things, if you are like me, or if this is something that interests you, those individually could be taken out and really meditated on. And in a way that is more about like the kind of meditation where you just take an idea and see if it fits you, right? You explore, like, does this work for me? Is this something that I want to go deeper into? Does this resonate on some level? It's new. No one else is talking about this. Could this be something that makes sense for me? Like, I think that those types of explorations are really powerful and can be incredibly transformative. You may walk away and say, yeah, this doesn't fit me. It doesn't really resonate with me. So you let it go. But even having the experience of checking in that way with new ideas, new thought forms, new proposals, really do a lot for maturing us spiritually, and also I think maturing us psychologically so we can engage in common society in a way that is more edifying, a little bit more critical minded, and I guess, dare I say, intelligent. I have a lot of thoughts. The other thing that came up with this book, which is part of the reason why I think it's great to read books that may not necessarily fit with us, is reading this book gave me a contrast to the experience that I've been having with the other books that I've read on ancestral work that have really spoken to me. So as of this video, I've read 4. I think you've gotten 2 reviews because, again, Mama can't keep track of anything at this point. There's so much going on. But I think that you've seen 2 reviews. This will be the 3rd, but I've read 4. Actually, there was a 5th that I didn't do a video on. Out of these 5 books that I've read so far on ancestral work, they've all come from different traditional lenses, from different religious lenses. Some almost stand in direct opposition to the other. But each of those books have given me a lot. I've learned a lot. I've learned about how different people deal with their ancestral work differently. And I've gotten the ability to shift lenses to see how ancestral work happens depending on your own lineage, right? Important stuff. But here's what's interesting in my own personal experience. And when I read this book by Raven, I was very aware of this. Each of those books, even though some of them have come from a tradition or a religion that I do not participate in, I don't subscribe to in any way, even books like that feel and have a sense that when you work with ancestors, and follow me here because this is like I'm just beginning to articulate this. Anytime I read about anything related to working with ancestors, no matter the tradition, no matter the lens so far, there is a very palpable, visceral, there's even like an energetic smell about the way people talk about this work that feels very much of the dirt. Does that make sense? If anyone out there even gets what I'm saying, please let me know so I don't sound like I'm insane, but there is an energetic vibration to what this work sounds and feels like. And the more I read about ancestors, the more they are dancing around me and I'm like, whoa, calm down. I will get to you in a minute, but I need to keep reading these books. But I feel like I have got a world of ancestral line dancing around me because the more you focus, right, the more you call. But it just, there's an earthy humus, dirt that's wet and old, vibration, pace, frequency to the way I'm receiving this work. And when I read this book, I didn't get that at all. And I wonder how much of it was because in the very beginning of the book, he writes about how he had a writer friend. I may be mistaken, but the writer friend was Thorne Coyle, who's also a writer. I could be wrong. I know that Thorne Coyle was mentioned, but a friend who kept saying, you need to write this book, you need to write this book, you need to write about the ancestors, and he's like, no, I don't really feel it. I don't know what I would write. It's certainly not a whole book worth. It's certainly maybe a blog post or an article, but he just wasn't feeling it. And he was asking for a sign from his ancestors and his ancestors weren't giving him anything. And I think like a period of 2 years or something passed where he just kept saying no. He would see the friend again. The friend said, you have to write this book. This is a book that wants to be written by you. And he just wasn't feeling it until one day he had a sign. And then he wrote the book. And when he tried to write the book, he still couldn't come up with the content. He didn't know where he was going. He would try to come up with an outline and it just wasn't working. And he very much, this is him conveying it in the introduction of the book, he very much felt as if he needed to let go and let the ancestors write this for him. I don't know that they did that. It feels like it was just he didn't have anything, so he threw everything in. And even though he says himself that he has his own ancestral veneration practices, I just didn't feel it. And it didn't come with that sensation and that dirt that I kept feeling with the other books, which is, I find really interesting. I don't know what it means. That is certainly not at all an objective type of review for all of you to follow. But I recognized that shift in myself and I thought, this is information. This is information to sit with. This is information to dive deeper into that has nothing to do with the actual book, but much more so with me and how I'm experiencing the energetic of the ancestors. And that gives me an opening for exploration to make deeper connection. Does that make sense? And the only reason I'm sharing that with you, other than I just get chatty on these videos, is that even a book that you don't like might provide you with an opening for something else or an awareness that you didn't have before, because this is wisdom. And if the book has come to you for some reason, the book has come to you for some reason. Does that make sense? So there's that. I guess that's all I have to say. I give this book a 2-star on Goodreads because of the respect that I have for this writer, but not because I recommend it, which who knows if that's okay or not. It is what it is. I think that as we approach October and November and the Ancestral Work box, and I do all of this reading, I appreciate the fact that this box and the rhythms of this box and now the book subscriptions give me chunks of time to focus on very specific things. I think that as witches, we try to learn as much as we can, and then we take 1 or 2 things that really resonate with us, and then we focus on that as a way to master something or learn something deeply, right? Because if you learn a little bit of everything, you've only learned a little bit of everything. At some point, we need to make choices about what we're going to give our focus to. I have really appreciated reading these books so far for the October box, partly because it gives me much more information to share with you through the box, through the blog posts, through social media, but also when we do our deep dive gathering for the box at the end of October. But it also has revivified in a lot of ways my own work with the ancestors, my own issues with my ancestors, and it enlivens it in a way that I needed it to be. right? Because I know a lot about how to work with ancestors. I can give you all sorts of rituals. I can give you all sorts of facts. And at some point we need to bring those in and reclaim them again. And I think that my own personal journey with this now is that there has been a reclamation due for a while. And it's almost as if my ancestors are kind of jumping around me like, ha ha, look what happened. We've been waiting for you kind of thing. So I appreciate it. That's kind of all I can say. I really appreciate it. So even this book, which kind of annoyed me and I didn't enjoy, and I really wanted it to be something more than it was, it showed me that even when something like this comes along, it's still a message of some sort. And so, whew, this is the work. It's beautiful. So there you go. Let me close out with, let's see, do I have announcements for you? The book subscription, the book subscription, the book subscriptions. You all need to be part of that. I am so excited. I feel like all I'm trying to do in my life at this point is make time gaps so that I can just spend hours with all of you on the forum talking about books. This is my new life. And I have no idea how I'm going to run the rest of the business because all I want to do is talk with you about books. So the Witches Book subscription is a $30 a month subscription, where you get 2 books a month that I choose for all of us to read. It will be basically focused on things that are more intermediate to advanced witchcraft so that we can talk and learn together. Once you subscribe, you also then become part of the Witches Book Coven, which is a private forum where we can talk about our reading throughout the month. And then at the end of the month, we'll have a live gathering to have like live book club. We'll talk about the book. We'll share about the book. When I can wrangle an author in, we're going to have an author come and visit us so that we can ask the author questions. I'm really excited about this new phase of the Witches Box, and I want as many of you as to be part of that as possible because this is the juice we are learning. And then, if you don't know, we have the Witches Box, which is the application of what we learn. Every month you get a ritual or a spell in a box with Book of Shadow pages, and you also get a live once a month gathering where we talk a little bit more about those rituals and spells so that you can learn as much as you can about those things. I mean, we're doing fun stuff. And for me, as we are approaching our 2-year anniversary when I send this out to all of you, I am so grateful. I'm grateful for your faith, and I am grateful for your faith, and I'm grateful for your presence, and I am grateful for how much, you may not know this, but how much your presence actually adds to this collective experience. Because on occasion I'll have contact with you all on social media or through email or through some form, and all of it just feeds what I really understand and see as our collective. And we've been really distant and far apart from each other because that's sort of the nature of being online, but more and more as time passes, we are finding ways to connect through either the forum or through the deep dives or through harvesting the honey or however we continue to communicate. And I want you to be clear that every time you tap in and you interact with something that we put out or you interact with each other, which I love when that happens, we are beginning to weave and form something that is bigger. I really see this as this beautiful energized web around the globe. And thank you. Thank you. I didn't really intend to get all emotional and say this, but as October, which is our anniversary month, rolls closer, I'm really just in a very, just deeply, deeply grateful place and just thrilled because we're just beginning, which is amazing. Okay, whew, enough of all that. Thank you. That was today's video, and I will see you at the next one.